Welcome on into GoldSheet TV Week 9 reactions, Week 10 look ahead. I'm your host, Eric Pauly, with my co-host, Dan Alexander, at Newbie Talks on X/Twitter. We're going to start, as we always do in Tuesday shows, by recapping what we did in Week 9, talk a little bit of overarching NFL themes for the rest of the season. And then we also have a little mailbag going. We asked for you guys to drop some questions in the comments last week. You guys obliged. We have two really great questions. And this is something that we want to do more and more down the line. So feel free to keep dropping these questions in for the Tuesday show. Then, of course, we will finish off with Thursday night football. But, Newbie, let's talk Week 9. How was your week?
Unfortunately, we have to recap the fact that I was on the wrong side of all wrong sides. You tried talking me out of it, man. You were just like, the handicap makes sense, but I don't know if we can bet on Geno Smith going on the road and taking on Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. That +6 wasn't even close, man. They get absolutely boat raced. And really, one of the things that my thought on the Seahawks really hinged on was being able to limit the turnovers for that Seattle offense. That didn't happen even a little bit once the score started going the other way. They were in it to start, and then the cracks in the armor started to show through. So wrong side through and through, too contrarian for my own good against the team that I still have solidly as the number one team in the AFC for me, and the Baltimore Ravens. I look for a fade spot, and your boy was dead wrong. Where I wasn't dead wrong was the homer pick of the week. As EP said, I'll pick against my birds the same way I'll pick on them. The -3 made a heck of a lot of sense for me. Ended up placing that one, and it got a little sweaty there at the end. You know, it took some inch away tackles that Chris Sims still wants to cry about live on the air. And then it just took one hell of a football game between the Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. But the Eagles -3 gets home. They go into the bye week flying high, a nice 8-1. So 1-1 split for me, man. It's been the theme of the show. You know, hit some player props here and there, but as far as the official show plays go, the contrarian nature has left me as just even Stevens each and every week. And if you're laying the juice, that's a losing better. Got to get better at than that. You know, not many non-split weeks. So hey, we'll bounce back. We'll be good to go. I just got to make sure I don't keep stepping in front of MVP-led trains, man. I mean, dear God, does this Ravens team look good? How about yourself, man?
Yeah, there are definitely times to make certain decisions, step in front of certain buses, catch some falling knives here and there, but very tough. And we're talking betting NFL spreads. Of course, it's something that you and I do year in and year out, but it's not the easiest thing. It's actually the most difficult thing you could probably be doing in terms of sports betting. So never going to complain about a little bit of a loss of a week. You got 18 of them to get after that positive money. On my end, I told you with the Birds -3, which ended up being great. The Kansas City Chiefs got home early to start off the day, but I was just off on the prop market this week, and you know it's going to happen. There was a lot of games that just went so. We've talked about this a little bit on the show before. Like there are times where your handicap is correct, the result just doesn't follow suit, and there are times where your handicap is just dead wrong, and you lose a bet, you're dead wrong, or maybe even you get lucky in that situation. This was a week where some of my handicaps were just wrong, and I did not get the luck of the gambling gods to, give me a winner in that sense. Handicap for me didn't go on the show, but talked about this on WagerTalk today. Was a client play like the Patriots, for example. I thought they'd be able to get after Sam Howell and make his life miserable. They did not whatsoever. Just a dead wrong handicap. But on the Panthers Colts side, like I'm not going to say I was right by any means in that game because of how it shook out, but you can't be really projecting 2 pick sixes. You can project some turnovers maybe and things like that, but what are you going to do when a rookie quarterback throws 2 pick sixes? What are you going to do there?
That's how it goes sometimes, man. That's how the cookie crumbles. And again, that's the ultimate equalizer. You talk about the spread being the ultimate equalizer. Turnovers just can automatically throw your handicap in disarray. I mean, think about how many sharp bettors and the marketplace indicated that the Jets were the sharp side last night. They get bet all the way down from that 3.5, 3 in the hook to the 3. They never had a shot in that game. Offense couldn't get it going. They start the game, and right away you have a punt return for a touchdown. You have an interception go back. So, once turnovers happen, that again are part of that luck factor that we also bring into some of our handicaps. Sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce your way, man. And you still have to feel like you can look at the play and the handicap you made and say, hey, I would make this bet 1,000 times over. The one that sometimes you look at the handicap and say, and we've talked about this before, damn, I was just dead wrong. And that was the case for me and the Seahawks. Even without those turnovers, the Seahawks were never the right side. Sometimes you can have those wrong or right side losers. But regardless, all that matters is getting the counter with a winning ticket. You can bemoan whether it's a right side or a wrong side, but we're in the business of results, man. So I feel you how frustrating at sometimes.
Yeah, the margins are just so thin. Very simple things, like you said, can turn a winner to a loser, loser to a winner. You could be dead right and have a losing ticket. You could be dead wrong and end up with a winning ticket, and vice versa. And that's just the game. No complaints. So let's move on, newbie. So we are 10 weeks into the season now, or 9 weeks into the season. This is the crucial time, these next 2 weeks, where it's like, okay, who actually is a good football team? Who actually can make a run for the Super Bowl, barring no injuries to key players? So let's just keep it simple for this week in terms of what we're discussing. Who to you at this point, because now, like, you cannot, I want to say you could throw away all priors and all things that happened early in the season, but there are some things, like, for example, the Bengals, you could throw out their data until 3 weeks ago, like, basically, long
Agreed.
time. The Buffalo Bills, too, though, you have to focus in more on their last, like, 2 or 3 weeks, because they're not getting that Milano back. They're not getting Tre'Davious White back. So things to consider. So at this point in time, this juncture, we're at the point where it is time to really be declaring who can separate from the pack and who can't. Who do you have in a tier that you could say, yeah, if you tell me tomorrow that the Super Bowl is between this team made the Super Bowl, who are those teams that you wouldn't blink an eye at right now?
Yeah, I'll start in the AFC, get your thoughts there, and then we'll swing on over to the NFC because I'm sure it'll be no surprise what team sits atop the NFC for me by record and just by vibes around the squad. But for me in the AFC, it's definitely some different tiers, and I'm glad you prefaced it with that because I think and it's easy to look at the records and put them in the tier alone, but I just think what you've seen from the Chiefs and the Ravens, that would be, my number one tier. The teams that I would have confidence if somebody forced me to put a future in. Those are two teams I would feel pretty good about. They're both sitting at 7-2. And honestly, if I had to do the 1 and 1A situation, the Ravens would end up on top for me, man. The defense looks terrific. The only worry that you maybe have is Lamar is a kind of ebb and flow guy, is Lamar Jackson. But when he's playing at his best, he plays at an MVP level, and that's what you're getting out of him right now. Could he have one of those hiccup games? Maybe, but he's put together, some nice showings in some back-to-back outings. So it would be Ravens on top for me. Chiefs being that 1A situation. And then the teams that are still around it, I don't want to completely discount the Buffalo Bills, but those defensive injuries concern me a lot. The erratic play of Josh Allen concerns me a lot. That was one of my issues heading into the year and why I thought this could be a team who exits early in the postseason. The other team I'm glad that you mentioned too is the Bengals. The funny thing is look at that AFC North, man. Every team above 500, the team that's sitting in second, if you're just going by tiebreakers, which is some of the in-division wins, the Steelers are somehow sitting in second. Bengals are sitting at the bottom of that ranking, so you can probably get some nice futures in on them to maybe make a play to win that AFC North, as they could potentially usurp if they keep this run going on. But Bengals are still in my conversation. I want to start believing in the Jags too. So I feel like that's the second tier for me would be the Bengals and the Jaguars. And then the teams that I just can't quite figure out, are they real? Are they not? That's where the Dolphins and Bills come into the equation for me. What do you think?
So yeah, I agree. I will keep Kansas City as number one. Like, not even a situation of like the king stays the king, right? You have to beat the best to claim that you're the best. It's just that when you have the combination of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, that's just the best head coach QB combo in football. And you have Steve Spagnuolo, who has always coached this great style of defense. But now the players that the Chiefs have on defense, like, while you don't think Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed are household names, you're going to be seeing people rocking their jerseys walking down the street. Those are football players, man. And then obviously Chris Jones dealing with some injuries to the linebacker crew that they have there, but that's just an all-around great team. So for me, it's Kansas City, one by itself. Baltimore right there because, like we talked about on Thursday, Mike McDonald has made his name as probably the best defensive coordinator this current season right now in the NFL. He's just been a step ahead, and Lamar Jackson is playing. I just love watching that man play football. So I have them right there. But then going down the line, I think you made a great point. Like the Buffalo Bills were a team that both of us were down on coming into the season. I don't want to say down, but we thought that maybe like the window was finally kind of closing. And the injuries are kind of really exemplifying that. And I don't want to count out this Bills team because their offense by EPA and success rate perspectives is still one of the best offenses in football. But while I'm personally a team, offense will beat defense at the end of the day. Like I know defense wins championships. Like I do not believe that. I think the better offense will prevail at that time. So leave a comment, let me know if you completely disagree with me there. But I think so. I think the Bills can't be discounted. And then the same goes for the Dolphins there because they do have the pieces to be great and they're finally healthy. So maybe this team can put it together more so going forward. So I still have more faith in Miami than Buffalo actually at this point in terms of the standings. So I'll go in terms of rankings. KC 1, Baltimore 2. I'll go Miami 3. And then in terms of the AFC North now, the Steelers, I think they're just going to fall off the planet. Like if they make the playoffs, like they're not winning anything significant. So that just, I don't want to say a waste of a spot because they'll deserve it, but I don't see a big future for them. The Browns, that defense is legitimate and it's amazing, but Deshaun Watson just was still terrible on Sunday. The numbers, you would think that they did well, but he was just not good. But then the Bengals, their defense, I'm just not ready to say is great. Like Lou Anarumo, great defensive coordinator, but like they don't have the pieces and the game-changing players. And while the names don't necessarily mean it all, I just don't know if they're going to be able to hang with the Baltimore or Kansas City or even in Miami for that matter. And then lastly, the Jags. Like I was low on them because I thought their defense sucked and that their offensive line was mediocre. Their defense has been playing great. And they went out and got a guard during the trade deadline to bolster their offensive line because they have something going. Doug Pearson's a great coach. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence. They have weapons. Defense is punching above its weight class. So those are the only teams that I could be serious about. So a long-winded way of saying, though, end of the day, Kansas City and Miami, though, probably not getting good prices at this point, but those are the two best teams in the AFC, if you ask me.
Yeah, I just, how many times do we have to look at this Dolphins team underperform against a strong team until we're just like, they're fine. They're in a great spot for Mike McDaniel being in his second year. Do I think they're a contender for the Super Bowl? I don't see it personally. So, hey, who knows? I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. But I think that's maybe the one team that we're at odds. Do completely agree with you with that Bengals defense. Man, when Joe Burrow's playing and when he's at his top flight level, he can do a lot to make you forget about what a defense is doing. That's for sure.
Absolutely amazing. And that's another thing too, is the Bengals are 100% ascending. Nobody's going to debate that. But I would argue that Miami is ascending. Whether or not you agree or disagree, that's a worthwhile debate. But I would argue because they're getting healthy on defense. They're looking more acclimated to Vic Fangio's system. Their offensive line was getting some pieces back. So I would argue that Miami has not peaked yet, and the best could still be yet to come for them. So, can see the cases for not.
Yeah, and for me, what I'd really like to see, what could get me really in on a Dolphins team, is like a statement road game. And I'm just running down their schedule. They go on the road December 31st and they beat the Ravens in Baltimore in cold weather. Discount everything I said about this team. But other than that, 4-0 at home, just 2-3 on the road. And those, one of those wins against the lowly Patriots. It just, I'd like to see him get a road stamp win because most likely the playoffs aren't going to run through Miami. And I'd like to just see him be a little bit stronger on the road. That would make me feel a lot better about them since we haven't seen that this year yet. I think that's what gives me more pause than anything that we see metric wise. It's more of just a vibe. Maybe it's anecdotal, maybe it's not, but to win in the playoffs, man, you have to be able to go on the road and win unless you're that one seed. So that's the one thing that I'd really like to see. That game's circled on my schedule for sure.
Yeah, and then the way it's going right now, Miami is in position to host at least one playoff game, so it could definitely propel them. And much like last year, they went in with Skylar Thompson to Buffalo in a playoff game and almost even pull off a win there.
True.
And now I could be turned in their hosting, so I'm definitely not discounting them. But move on to the NFC because the AFC is a lot more interesting. For me, it's just plain and simple. You got the Birds are the best team in the division in the conference. I think you could make the case that the Lions are the second best. I'm not making that case. I still have the Niners there. But you can make the case the Lions are in that ballpark. Dallas, I have to give them some kudos. Like they lost
Yep.
the game by literally an inch. Like they played well and looked good. But you could talk Seattle, you could talk Minnesota, you could talk New Orleans. Like those teams to me just really don't have anything to like propel them. It's Birds, Niners, Cowboys, and Lions with a grain of salt for me in that particular order for best team in the NFC. And of course, I give the edge to Philadelphia in everything because I don't think Brock Purdy, come December, playing a game in the cold at the link, would be a good situation for him. So that's for me with the NFC, plain and simple. What about you? Do you think any team can come out of the woodwork, or like Seattle, for example, maybe, or where your head's at there?
I mean, I just can't believe your top teams. You don't have the NFC South as a major role player here
Unfortunately, not.
in, in the NFC playoffs. You don't want Arthur Smith underutilizing a running back taken over high, underutilizing a tight end taken high, underutilizing their wide receiver in Drake London. Man, I had to slip in some Arthur Smith hate because man, this guy makes me absolutely scratch my head. Yeah, we talked about it earlier in the season. The NFC South, Falcons, Saints, Bucks, whoever it ends up being out of that division, you're excited to go on the road and play that road game. Someone will get to host a playoff game, whether they should or not. That's for debate on another show. But as far as the top contenders go, yeah, I mean, just by record wise alone, a 3-game winning streak that they're on, the Eagles 8-1. If it weren't for that abysmal performance, they're going into the bye week 9-0. But regardless, even with the one loss on the resume, they got 2 games up in the NFC East heading into the bye. They got 1 game up in the entire NFC, and that's on the Lions. People thought that would, be the 1-2 race between them and the 49ers, but you can't discount the Lions. So as far as the tiers go, I feel like the Eagles, until they lose, until somebody goes into the house and beats up on them, until they lose to a top flight team that isn't just a horrible letdown game like against the Jets, I feel like you have to put them at the top. I'm with you. As much as hate as I throw by the 49ers wayside and the fans always getting at me in the comments below, they're still a great team. That offense is unreal. When they're healthy, it's just going to be a very hard team to slow down. And if they can get healthier on the defensive side of the ball as well, that's a team that's going to be around the conversation. Plus, they get the chip on their shoulder. Plus, they get just added motivation with how bitterly their season ended last year, with injuries really being the ultimate equalizer. And it's a huge litmus test for them coming out of the bye. Jaguars coming off the bye. This is a really good matchup for both of these teams to see who is for real. Who do they respond after all the outside noise? Maybe the Jags getting a little bit hyped up into the bye, the 49ers getting lamented. Who comes out and makes a statement? That one's going to be a hell of a football game and a very defining football game. Like, that's the thing, is now that we're going into week 10, these games aren't just, hey, let's talk about the spread. Like, you're talking about playoff picture now, and you're talking about who's legit, who's not. We have enough data to do so. Sure, any given Sunday, don't get me wrong, but this is a huge upcoming week. These next 3 weeks and a lot of good matchups are really going to define what the hierarchy of these teams are. Seahawks, I'd like to believe in them, man. I can't with Geno Smith up at the helm. The defense is all right. It's inconsistent at best. The fact that they give that poor of a performance when they had the huge step up in competition, I can't put them in the conversation. But the Lions, man, this was a team. This is the last one that I'll talk about here. This is a team that you and I kind of said, like, heading into the year, you have to show us to until we believe in you. 6-2, man. They've showed us, and now they get a game that's going to be a quasi home game against the Los Angeles Chargers. Them coming out of the bye as well. And it used to be they're going to play good at home. Jared Goff's going to get put numbers up at home. Jared Goff, SoCal boy, I think he'll be humming. And they're 3-1 at home. They're 3-1 away. The impressive resume for the Detroit Lions cannot be discounted. It's no longer like, ha, look at how the Lions are doing. They're a player in the NFC, and the record indicates it. The stats indicate it. I put them, if the Eagles are the 1, the 2, and the 2A, and it's hard for me to choose, is the 49ers and the Lions.
Yeah, and no disagreements whatsoever. And last thing I'm going to say is a lot of these teams come down to you just can't ignore is coaching. Like the
Yep.
Eagles, Nick Sirianni has proven he's a great coach. The Cowboys can't win those big games. Yes, Mike McCarthy has that one ring, but like he's clearly not a great coach. Kyle Shanahan, great coach in terms of the offensive play calling and making that bad boy hum, but some questionable in-game decisions, their inability to come from behind, that could really hinder the Niners team. Pete Carroll, great coach. Okay, so we're not discounting Seattle. Detroit, Dan Campbell and the staff has been absolutely fantastic in terms of making plus EV decisions in the roster and the lineup and also on the football field in games. So those are things that really propel those teams. And then you also look at like a Saints, outside the fact that Derek Carr is terrible, terrible with a grain of salt, just not that great. Their head coach, Dennis
Yeah.
Allen, is also terrible. So they're never going to really be that serious. So that's just something to consider as well is you do have your time where there is going to be a crappy coach who propels a team to victory and to the playoffs and gets his one ring or, now cements his legacy. That's just a magical season. But what really separates in both conferences the really great teams are the head coach, and not just the head coaches, the entire coaching staff being just great is what makes these teams great. So I'm going to keep in mind moving forward. But let's answer some of your questions. Hit this like button now to show some support. It's the best way to help support the show is liking and commenting. Let us know some questions for next week. But Newbie and I are going to open up the mailbag and talk some questions. First question is from E-Train FSB2479. And he says, I love basketball, but I feel like I would be a smarter bettor if I focus on the NFL until the season is over. Obviously, you guys are pros and have time to be an expert on multiple leagues. What should a serious recreational bettor with life like myself do? You want to start here, Newbie?
Well, I mean, the thing is I feel like basketball, especially if you're talking NBA early in the season, whew, is that a hard sport to be handicapping? Think of the runs that teams go on. I'm a live better when it comes down to basketball. I like, if I'm watching the game, you see a team go down who is maybe a favorite, you get a favorable number on them. I very rarely bet basketball specifically pre-flop. It's just the way that I enjoy betting the sport. But as far as being a recreational bettor, you can focus on a couple different sports. You know what I mean? You can hone in on a couple different things that you're trying to look at and still succeed. Because as a recreational bettor, the number one thing that you need to be doing is practicing good bankroll management. If you're following multiple sports, as long as you don't have 20 units in play, more than half of your bankroll in play any given day, as long as you're being smart with your money, I see no reason why you can't look at other leagues. And also, maybe the way instead of betting it early on, you're a huge basketball fan. Use that to your advantage and paper track your plays. That's something that I do if I'm not really ready to go all in. I handicap betting on lacrosse, and that's a sport that I feel like I have a major edge on. That I can definitely get some money in on, and they allow me to get money down on. However, just because I love the sport and I'm able to handicap the sport, I'm not always pulling off the rubber band and making a hell of a lot of plays. Sometimes, especially early on in the season, I'll look at what the lines are. I'll write down what my bet would have been. I'll watch that game. And then, sure, you're going to be kicking yourself if you start off on a 10-0 run saying, how the hell did I not make money? But if you start off on an 0-10 run, you're going to be thanking your lucky stars that you just sat back and learned. So still watch the sport that you love, still be engaged with the sport that you love, and still be aware of how the market is pricing those teams. If it makes sense for your bankroll, you can still bet them. Just be smart with your money. I don't think there's any reason why you feel like you only have to hone in on one sport, only hone in on one league. Sure, specializing is great. But when you're a recreational bettor, a lot of the times you're just trying to have some fun, try and make some extra coin. So I don't see any problem as long as you're not spreading yourself thin money wise. Keep watching the sports that you love, and if you think you have a good bet, throw the bet in and maybe just down your unit size. If you're really worried about it, paper track the plays, see where you would have been, and then when you feel comfortable watching both of the leagues and you feel like you have a good handle, maybe then start expending some of your bankroll. What do you think, EP?
Yeah, so I think my advice would be more catered toward, like you said, like if you can specialize on one thing, you think you'd just be the best. Like if you only focus on handicapping NFL sides, like you think you'd have the most success handicapping sides. Well, the truth of the matter is the NFL is one of the most efficient markets in all of sports. So even if you spend 100 hours a week focusing in on solely handicapping NFL sides, and this goes for myself as well as newbie, like there are people that are better at handicapping NFL sides than you. It's just the market. It's just impossible for there not to be, especially professional, recreational. There's always going to be a level above what you can do. So my advice would be to focus in on the prop market and to take that to a little bit more of a nuanced level, whether that be only receiving yards in the NFL, only passing yards, only passing completions, only longest completion, or in the NBA, only points, only rebounds, only assists, is you can do both and you should do both because while, yes, you want to specialize in one thing, there are edges to be found across different markets. So if you break it down to just betting on NBA rebounds and NFL receiving yards, I think as a recreational bettor who has a love for both sports, you'll be able to find that you're not stretching your bankroll too thin, or two, your actual like time you're spending too thin because you're one with markets that are less efficient, so there's easier to beat, and two, you're dealing with markets that are easier to price out and are a little bit less competitive. So you should be able to take that interest in basketball and use it to your advantage, but you can't be anticipating to have boatloads of success betting NFL side most time you can on NFL sides. NFL sides is the hardest thing to beat. So my advice is you have time to do multiple leagues if you hone in on just two things. And after you find some success and it becomes easier to focus in on just points in the NBA and receiving yards in football, like say after a week, you're like, wow, like, I was able to get to these numbers pretty quickly and now I had success with them. Then expand to assists and passing yards if that's what you wanted to focus in on. So in order to do both leagues at a serious time and to be serious about it, the advice simply put is focusing on the prop market, find one or two categories in the prop market and make that your sole focus. And I think that that is the best course of action. Any pushback there, newbie, or what are your thoughts?
No, I think it makes a heck of a lot of sense. And again, don't spread yourself thin where you're, especially when it's the sport equinox nights. If you have us play in every single sport, that's when you're probably spreading yourself a little too thin. Maybe you throw in a fun parlay here and there, but trying to specialize in all that, there is very few, if any, sports bettors, pro or not, that are going to be able to handicap every league. Some people, when you get released plays across multiple leagues, a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's a team of handicappers doing that. You know what I mean? Very rarely is there going to be one human being. And again, I say very rarely. I mean, it doesn't happen. If you are getting releases on basketball, football, multiple leagues, the reality of it is that you're getting that from a team of handicappers. So don't try and kid yourself into thinking that you're going to be able to beat every single sports betting option that's out there. I think one of the best tools that we have as recreational bettors and as pro bettors, we don't have to bet every single thing that's on the board. So use that to your advantage for sure.
Yeah, find your edges and bet those edges. It's that simple. The GoldSheet team I was a part of. We have experts for college football, college basketball, NBA basketball, football. That's my cup of tea is that MLB and the National Football League. Yes, we're always going to have NCAAF plays and college basketball plays and NBA plays because we have other experts working on those plays. So I could do my best work on those two sports when they're happening at the same time. So find markets that are beatable, and the best markets I would say are prop markets, and just focus on there. And that's my advice for that one. So moving on to a next question, Adam Martin 4031. Talking about some of the things we've used on the show, you've mentioned DVOA, but what other metrics and sources do you use, of course, other than the GoldSheet as the rare than that? Thank you for mentioning that. A lot of handicappers I know still use the GoldSheet, and I love it. But obviously, you should be focusing in on multiple things. I'll just answer this quickly from my point of view. Big fan of DVOA. It's hosted on FTN.com. They have DVOA for how teams do individually every single game, every single week on the course of the season, compiling strength of schedules, compiling power ratings of who they played, who they're going to play, variance factors, luck factors, DVOA against specific wide receivers, DVOA against specific coverages. So DVOA, everything that it encapsulates is a huge thing for me. Then a couple other things I really focus on is shout out to Cleve TA on Twitter. He has his own content where he posts his own metrics, his own numbers on his website for a fee. You got to be willing to spend for good information too. I'm just going to put that out there also. You're not going to be able to just Google footballreference.com and you'll get some basic numbers, but you're going to probably have to spend. So shout out to Cleve TA. His numbers for success rates and things are amazing. On the free side, rbsdm.com in terms of EPA success rate for teams and quarterbacks. That's a great free resource. So you can see how often teams are successful on early downs, late downs, turnover factors, turnover margins, things like that. And another final tool is I'm a PFF guy. I don't take everything they say, or I should say, I do take everything they say with a grain of salt because they're just grading games and film. They're not going to be accurate on every single thing. You're
Yep.
going to have some disagreements. But if you're seeing how a receiver does against, man coverage or zone coverage, and to see who gets the higher target share and what their average depth of target is, and how the quarterback does under pressure, I think they do a really good job with grading those things out. So, long-winded way of saying rbsdm.com is great. DVOA on FTN is great. Shout out to Cleve Analytics. He's one of the GOATs, if you ask me. He's fantastic. And I'm a fan of PFF. Among other things, I'm sure I'm forgetting some things, but those are things that I'm opening every single morning from, 8 a.m. to I'm going to bed. And also the WagerTalk Live odds screen to keep up with what's
Yes.
going on there. What about you, newbie? What else are you looking at for handicapping?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the odds screen because that's one of the biggest things that I like doing is using, market moves and seeing where early money is, seeing where late money is, and factoring that into my handicap. As far as metrics go, you hit the nail on the head. You do have to be willing to spend a little bit if you want those metrics, and that's why I think GoldSheet is such a great tool to use. And obviously, the show that we do is all about having you check out the GoldSheet, and not only yes, they'll tell you, hey, here's what the play is, but the analytics that come with it and just the incredible information that you can get, it is such a terrific starting point and ending point for how you're going to handicap these games. So, obviously it's like, of course, you're going to say the GoldSheet, but I use it myself. I know many pro bettors, both in and outside of Wager Talk, use the GoldSheet week in and week out because of what a tremendous resource it is. And with the handicaps and write ups on games, you're going to get a lot of these metrics that maybe are coming from sites that do use a little bit of pay because the people behind the GoldSheet, EP included, he's putting in the work and wants to have the handicaps and the write ups make sense. So, again, I know you're going to bemoan and be like, yeah, we get it. GoldSheet. I couldn't recommend it more as the beginning and ending of how you're handicapping all of these leagues, and they do all of these leagues. So I highly suggest checking that out if you haven't. You just missed out on the free access, but there's always deals going on. So just keep your eyes peeled, and we obviously share them here on the show as well. Since you hit a lot of the specific, team rankings and how you get into those ones for prop bettors, I love, and it's kind of, rudimentary and goes without saying, but Pro Football Reference is a great site because you're able to do queries. You're able to do career splits for players, for teams. You're able to see where teams rank in different metrics, and that's completely free. And that's profootballreference.com. Another one, you always know I love coming on here with historical data and where I draw a lot of that historical data from. I know a lot of people like doing the SDQL stuff. I leave that to our man, Ralph Michaels, and sometimes I'll hit him up and ask for queries. You can always reach him on Twitter as well. Teamrankings.com has a lot of historical data for how teams went over, how teams went under, who's covering. And you can also do queries as how do they play as home favorites, as away favorites, off of a bye, with added rest, with less rest. I use that all the time just to see some historical data that might be good, fodder. It might help you, find a handicap, but when there's a big subset, it also gives you the ATS margin for those as well. So let's say you have a small ranking or a small sample size of 10 or less, that's where you turn to the ATS margin. If the ATS margin is, 3 to 6 points, who cares about it? But when you're looking at a trend that has a 12 ATS margin, that is something that is significant and can be added into a handicap. And last but not least, for player props for me, CBS Sports has a really nice tool where you're able to take entire teams and how they face off against certain positions. So you can see, is a team strong against a tight end? Is a team bad against a running back? Again, this factors in with DVOA, but if you just want some more surface level stuff for handicapping some player props that maybe doesn't go over a lot of recreational bettors' heads, those are 3 free resources that I really enjoy using just to have a handle on. It's not the crux of my handicap, but I think it is worthwhile for sure to use some of those free resources while they're out there.
Yeah, 100%. Like, there's so many things to do in terms of looking at this. Like, there are reasons how the sportsbooks can make these numbers and bettors can beat them. There's infinite. I want to say infinite, but there is a ton of different resources. And the one thing I will
Yeah.
say though is make sure you cross-reference some of these things, because when it comes to certain measurements, like even like pressure rates or like completion percentage over expected, like all stats are made up. Like they came from some subjective thing where somebody said this equals that, and that is how a stat came to be. But on a lot of these more advanced analytical stats that 100% need to exist and provide some great context to the game, two different people can see the same exact thing happen and view it differently. So while one website might show, this team has 10 pressures, while other website might show this other team has 7, you're going to be like, where's the discrepancy? And it becomes that you have somebody with their own two eyes grading it. So just some food for thought there is make sure you're kind of double checking and cross referencing things, because some of these things that are not cut and dry, like incomplete or complete,
Hmm.
are honestly subject to the eye of the viewer or the beholder, I should say, whoever's making that stat. So just something to
True.
keep in mind, because it's a thing. Like you'll see, I'll go through my things and I'll see this team is 18th in EPA defense over the middle, and I'll see another thing that says they're fourth. That's a huge discrepancy. Who's right? Who's wrong? Maybe that's when if you are a bettor who has time, look at the tape and make your own decision.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm right
So
there with
yeah,
you. Your eyes can be a great resource that really gets discounted. I completely agree with you there, man. Sometimes a lot of people in the sports betting industry will bemoan when somebody says, "Well, the eye test this, well, the eye test that." It's part of your opinion, and sometimes that's just as big as looking at these analytical numbers. People say numbers don't lie. Sometimes they do. Sometimes your eyes lie as well, and that's why you use the holistic approach. I couldn't agree more, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. Trusting yourself in what you see sometimes can be the best thing that you can do.
yeah, 100%. So we can talk about these kind of things for hours. So this is why we want you guys to drop in the comments so we can get
Hmm.
some pointed questions. A huge shout out to the two people who sent those questions, because they're amazing. Hopefully, we gave you some information right there. Going a little long, so we're gonna get to TNF real quick. Bears laying 3.5 at some shops at home. Total of 39. Bryce Young, 2 interceptions, 2 pick sixes, excuse me, 3 interceptions last week. Tyson, I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. I'm not even going to try to. We're gonna call him Teabag. He had 5 turnovers, and I don't want to watch this football game on Thursday. Newbie thoughts. Would you have any thoughts, comments, concerns, or should we just say, if your girlfriend's been begging you to take her out, maybe you could throw her a bone on Thursday night?
Yeah. No, this is the date night special. It's very rare, and you don't even have to tell her that it's a horrible matchup, because this will score you some major brownie points if you're like, babe, let's go on a date this Thursday night. She's gonna be like, but what about Thursday night football? This is where you say you're more important than Thursday night football,
Yep.
baby. Let's go out. Let's have a good time. She doesn't have to know that it's the Panthers and Bears and you're just sparing yourself having to watch this game. All joking aside, man, I mean, I'm with you. Look ahead on this 1.5. It's up to Chicago -3. At 3.5, even in some spots. I have no interest in laying points with Tyler Bagent. I have no interest even if Justin Fields is back, laying points with the Chicago Bears. But
Yep.
in the same breath, I don't want to take points after Carolina won the Super Bowl that they did. They got the monkey off of their back, and then they kind of revert back to how they looked, how they played before. What I will say is unders have cashed with regularity, 61% essentially this season. If you blindly bet unders, just an unreal run that's happening in the NFL.
Yeah.
This feels like it's too easy. 39 and a half. I don't know. When all's said and done, am I going to be the sacrificial lamb that bets over on this game? I very well may be. It just feels like, because there is no reason why this game would go over, maybe we get some pick sixes that go back. Maybe we get some special team scores. 39 sounds like the perfect number, but I think maybe it would be pizza money for me on the over, and just hope we get somewhat of a decent game. What say you? I really have nothing in this game, man. Player props don't interest me, because with a 39 total, you can't really rely on it. Sure, you can maybe pick some unders. I don't know the status of Justin Fields as it stands here as we're recording on Tuesday. I feel like I've already said too much about this game. So lean over for no reason other than it makes no sense. That's the way that I look at that in this game.
Yeah, I'm not going to even just like beat around the bush or get some filler in. I want nothing to do with laying points with Teabag and Co. I want nothing to do with betting on the Panthers again. after what they showed last week. The Bears defense is not as bad as advertised. The Panthers offense is 100% as bad as advertised. Chicago was able to run the football on the Saints defense that's very stout on Sunday. So that's going to give me a lean toward the under, because these two teams are going to want to get the ball out of their quarterback's hands, and running the ground game will kill clock. So hate to not have anything actionable. I think Newbie made a great point that look to bet some unders in this game. Like player props, we've been giving out a lot of overs on props because your mind just generally wants to look at the overs, but unders are a way to do. Sometimes it's easier to bet on something not to happen than to bet on something to happen. So just never forget that. But we'll leave this Thursday night preview breakout pretty simple.
Thank God.
Yeah, just do yourself a favor, like Newbie said. Score some brownie points with your significant other on Thursday night, and that's a win.
This is your chance to be boyfriend of the year this week. This is your chance.
You'll be spending money to go out to dinner, so you won't lose that money on a bet this week. But again, I think that's a plus. It's a positive EV play is going about it that
Major plus EV play, absolutely.
That'll wrap it up for us today. We'll be back Thursday with best bets, looking to bounce back from a very mediocre week. We apologize, but the game is the game. So while it obviously sucks for our bankroll and if it's tailed, we'll do better moving forward. So shout out to you guys. We'll see you guys Thursday. Hammer that like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave us some comments. We'll see you guys next time.